I would like to thank Burnaby, Tourism Burnaby, and especially Alice, Adrian, and Seth for creating this environment for me to share a topic that I think our society should really talk about more. And so again, thank you for giving me this platform as well and give back to our community. So as I reflect on my relationship to you guys who are leaders, practitioners in our hospitality industry, I realized that, and Alice, you probably didn't know this, I started my first job working as an intern at a hotel. So this is a photo of a hotel called Golden Gulf Hotel in China, where I came from. And I worked in the business center for a summer, or maybe like 1 or 2 months. So that was really fun. And outside of that, I love to travel. And this is a photo of me in Iceland, some ice field that I don't remember the name of. And so tourism, hospitality industry has been really, really close to my heart. At a certain point, actually, I almost did my undergrad in that area. So I really, really feel for the type of hardship that this industry is going through right now. And I'm really pleased to be able to share some tidbits about how we can cope in this difficult time. So just to expand a little bit more on my journey so far, I think some of the transitions in this journey could paint a bit of a picture or illustrate certain points in what I'll cover later. So this is where I met Alice, actually. I'm going to date myself. Almost 20 years ago, came from China, do my undergrad at SFU, majoring in marketing and HR. And then I've worked in 2 different industries. I've eventually got tired of working in HR because it's too admin focused. So I did a big change and switched into TELUS, where I spent about 7 years in marketing. So near the end of my 7-year career, I felt that I kind of got tired of selling phones and rate plans, and I discovered the field of professional coaching. And that's when I realized that it's really important for us to know about what is really important to us, our values, what is important in our society, what are some problems that we really want to solve and play a role in. So I felt that coaching is really a good tool that I could learn to help more people with that. Funny enough, as that kind of dream or it was kind of like germinating in my head, that hit the financial crisis in 2015. So I was laid off at TELUS after 7 years. Luckily, I already went through that self-discovery. I know what's important to me. I know what path I was going into. So I decided that I'm not going to look for a job in telecom anymore. No more marketing for myself. I want to do my own thing. It's kind of naive though, because just replacing a full-time income with something freelance and as a coach in training is actually not quite realistic. So I was pretty lucky that this company, Right Management, who offered me career transition support, happened to have a role that is a great fit for me as a career consultant. So that's how I started my experience helping people with career transition after they have been laid off by their organizations. And through a bunch of other unplanned events, I went out to meet a lot of people. I don't want to bore you with that. The UBC opportunity came out. So since about 4 years ago, I started working at a Sauder School of Business, supporting MBA students, largely an international population, with their own career transition, their own career change. And in that whole journey, of course, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of pathfinding. And that's why I also started another company on the side called Bold Careers, where we help people with that career wayfinding by adopting more of a business model approach, thinking about yourself as the owner of your startup, like you're a product, and how do you go to market? How do you sell yourself? What is your value proposition? Because I really believe that when you think from that mindset, you have more agency, more motivation to take control of your own life. So after a while, I realized that, okay, having that path doesn't seem to be enough. Knowing the direction is one thing. People still need to have the resilience, the motivation, the grit to pursue it, to make it happen. And that leads to my pursuit of the Master of Applied Positive Psychology. So a lot of the information I'm sharing today, obviously, is from this domain. And I hope that you'll find some of them useful. So let's dig in here. First of all, we're talking about psychology. So obviously we would like to know how you're feeling. We talk about emotions. And we know you're going through a difficult time, or at least some of you. So I would like to invite you to check in a little bit with yourself, to become a bit more present. So I'm going to activate a poll, and I wonder whether, Seth, you mind helping me type in the link at the top, paulag.com/Iris Cai 769. So you could type in that in order to start this poll. Alternatively, you can use your cell phone as well to send a text in order to join this poll. See. Let me know whether you have any question. I believe when you get in, you do have to agree to the cookie policy first by clicking agree, and then you enter your name. We will not see your name. Everything is anonymous. And I just would love to see a couple of the emotions or feelings, related words entered, and those answers would appear on here right away. Can anybody see it? Is it activated, by the way? I believe it is. It should be coming up.
Iris, I just opened the link, but nothing is coming up. It just says welcome to Iris. So
okay, I just click another one. Okay, it does now, right? Okay, good. Sometimes the button toggling is a bit weird. So you should be able to see the question on your browser. How are you feeling? Too? If you think, okay, this is not what I want to enter, you could clear your response and enter something else instead too. Got it. Mm-hmm. Okay, feel free to enter as well. Seth, Alice, love to hear what you guys think. It's scattered. Optimistic, uncertain, hopeful. Good. I believe you guys are all done. Maybe you can click the raise hand, or if you, raise hand if you're done. All right, I'm gonna just lock this right now. And obviously, if you wanna share how you're feeling, and you didn't get a chance to put your comments into the poll, feel free to put that in the chat box. Okay, this is how you're feeling, and looks like most of us are feeling anxious and nervous. And a few of you feeling some positive emotions of support, okay? And some hope as well, optimistic. So let's move on to the next one. And in this one, I would like you to hold that emotions that you just felt earlier. Is this open right now, by the way? I don't know whether I need to activate it one more time.
It's open.
It's open, perfect. So think about the feelings that you just saw on the screen. Hold these people, everybody on this call, in your heart. And think about 1 to 2 words that you would like to describe your hope for them after this workshop. Mm-hmm. Trust, supported, healthy. Strength, positive, safe. Yes, together. All right. So it looks like you guys all get the drill. A bit more. Collaborative. Anybody else want to add? All right, I'm going to lock this one as well. Thank you for participating here. Looks like healthy is a big one, staying at home, containing the spread of the virus. And I see a lot of that trust and support that we would like to let each other feel. So I know this is a very different platform. A lot of you probably don't know each other. I heard there's someone dialing in from Edmonton even, which is amazing. So I hope that this word cloud can help you all feel that even though you're not seeing each other physically, this is our hope for you. And we have weaved a very strong social fabric together thanks to the colleagues over here, and we're going through this together. Now, moving on to our agenda today, I'm going to go through 3 big chunks of information. First of all is the topic of post-traumatic growth, which is very closely related to resilience. Just to set a big umbrella picture, big picture for you guys. Then I'll go do a general resilience overview to share some general tips. And then we'll do a deep dive on how we build our resilience through our thinking. I know you're all probably in a different pocket of the hospitality industry, of the tourism industry. So I believe something has to do with our thinking style, the way we interpret our situations could be something you could apply in almost all areas of your life, personal, professional. And then at the end, we'll have the discussion or Q&A. All right. So post-traumatic growth. Some psychologists use this metaphor that it's like a gift that's wrapped in a barbed wire. It's a kind of growth in your character, the way you view things, that comes from suffering. It comes from struggles. And this is a bit of a textbook definition. It is a positive kind of a psychological change that come from struggle with highly challenging circumstances. It could be a layoff for some people. For others, it could be a divorce. Obviously, what we're going on right now, which is so systematic, it could be even worse than like a recession for some, is it's very traumatic. So I would like to share this concept just to instill some hope that post-traumatic growth is possible. And psychologists have been studying what led to post-traumatic growth, just to give you some general idea. Adversity or trauma can sometimes also feel like a door that is slammed in our face, and it's really difficult to see a way forward. So we're also hoping that the skills that we share today can give you some, almost like some inkling, some inspiration on how we can open other doors to foster that psychological well-being that we're hoping to cultivate for all of you. So like I said earlier, a lot of the tools I would like to share today has to do with thinking. So in the psychology terminology, it is the cognitive process that we would like to take a look at. So based on research, there are 3 big types of cognitive processes that are involved in those people who manage to survive and then thrive after a crisis. The first one is construing benefits. What kind of good things can come out of this process? Secondly, it's about finding meaning. And we'll get into those in more detail. The third one is building optimism. So I'll go through them one by one as a general overview. Construing benefits, pretty straightforward. What are some side benefits of this? For some people who have the benefit of working from home, maybe this is being able to sleep for a few more hours, or spending more time getting closer to their children, to their spouse, their parents. Downward social comparison sounds a little bit not too nice, but it does help people with their coping. For example, thinking that, wow, I have health insurance, or I have an employer who actually give me a decent package when I get let go, for example, what happened to me before. Just comparing to those who are worse off than you is a way of construing the benefit as well. I would like to pause a bit to share 2 interesting bias that it's probably not new to you. Confirmation bias means we tend to look for evidence of things that are more aligned with what we already believe in. For example, I just bought a red car, then suddenly you just go on the street and then you see a lot of red cars. Your brain just tends to get drawn towards things that you're more familiar with, or things that you already believe in. And another one that is a bias that I would like to share is negativity bias. Because of it's actually an evolutionary advantage for us to pay attention to negative things more, to keep our safety. Our brain are just so hardwired to pay attention to that way more. It keeps us safe and healthy, but sometimes when the situation is not as negative, this kind of bias can give us a lot of miserable, a lot of negative emotions. So I'd like to share these 2 biases just to illustrate that for us to help with our coping and look at our thinking is actually to leverage the benefit of confirmation bias and train our brain to notice more of the positive things, the benefits, so that gradually, of course, in the right situation, we can feel more positive emotions. We can feel more motivated to go about our day, rather than being drawn automatically to the negativity in our environment. Does that make sense? Any questions at this point? Okay, looks like we're good. And we'll come back to this notion in a bit shortly too. Some other things, which is similar to this, is thinking that, okay, this thing could be worse, right? And forgetting the negative. Some people actually are good at just tuning that out. So I want to focus on, this is not sticking your head in the sand like ostrich. This is about being more realistic. And of course, you still want to prepare for the worst, but it's not overly focusing on only the negative. Okay, so folks who are good at this tend to survive and then thrive after a trauma. Another one is in the realm of meaning. There are different layers of meaning, depending on the people, depending on the stage of life, depending on the type of drama that we're going through. So I'll share a couple of them for you. This is one of the biggest philosophers, Nietzsche. Some of them might have known a lot of the quotes he has shared as well. Nietzsche has gone through a lot of depression or psychological struggle in his own life, but he has a lot of wise words to say, probably through his own struggle. So this famous quote is, "He who has a why to live can bear with almost anyhow." What it's trying to say is when we have more of that guiding purpose, or at least it can be a little problem that we would like to help address in the world. For example, like the team here, Tourism Burnaby, they have a lot of their fires to put out, but people like Seth, Adrian, Alice thinking that, but I want to do something for our community though. This kind of outward focused thinking can temporarily remove them from ruminating on their own personal struggles. And that is something that can sustain them more. But obviously, Nietzsche is a philosopher. What does he know about mental health or psychology, right? So let's look at what psychologists said about this topic. This is a psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, who actually survived the Holocaust. He was at the concentration camp before, and being a psychiatrist, he started paying attention to who are the people who just managed to survive such a dire situation in the concentration camp. And he actually later even invented logotherapy, which is a kind of therapy to help people who have dealt with trauma. So one famous quote Dr. Frankl come up with is, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And this just illustrates the importance of that mindset, the perspective that we want to use to view our situation. Or do you have something that we can control? And that is our attitude, how we interpret a situation. Because of time, I'm not going to go into the quote at the bottom, but again, it has to do with that mission, that outward focused kind of mentality. Become more outward focused when focus on other people, and that also helps us with our coping. Religion, spirituality have also been found to be really important in helping people to cope. Those who are religious tend to think that, okay, this has to do with maybe God's plan or somebody bigger than myself, and there's a reason in this event happening. So they tend to be able to accept the situation more and be at peace with it. A lot of us are not religious. You can be spiritual, or you could just at least feel that you're connected to a larger whole. Okay, it doesn't have to be something that is really, really spiritual or has to do with say the universe. It's just that mentality that, okay, I'm connected with a larger whole, with a community. And this, again, that social fabric, that same kind of mindset helps people feel more supported. And earlier on, as you can see, the word cloud has many, many repetitions of the word support. And this kind of feeling helps people cope as well. The last one, which is what we're actually going to spend more time today, is how you interpret a situation. And specifically, the psychological term is your explanatory style. Whenever there's something tough happening to us, we tend to ask why, like, why me? Why the tourism industry? Like, why coronavirus? Like, why is this happening? And what can we do with this? And the exploratory style is how we attribute this event to. So the way you explain the situation has a lot to do with the emotions that you gain out of this process as well. And we're going to go into some detail in a little bit. So I just want to pause a little bit here to see what is some questions you have, or maybe take a little bit of a mental note on what would you do to make yourself or your loved ones feel a little bit better after learning about the construing benefits, finding meaning, and optimism. If you have anything quick that you would like to share, feel free to type that into the chat box as well. Anything? No? Or no questions?
I'll go, Alice, here. I think our biggest takeaway is actually even something like today, that we are here listening to you, as well as I think being able to connect as an industry and provide guidance. I think that's the big one. Like you said, we're trying to find our own meaning, and our industry advisory group really came together this last 2-3 weeks to really kind of put things together and try to reconnect our community that's been through some layoffs, and some who've been through business closures. So really at the end of the day, we're trying to be that hope as well. And we're trying to share that hope with others so that they can know that they're not alone in all this.
Amazing, thank you. Yes, and I think for you, you're finding that meaning, and you seem to have perceived a benefit, a side benefit that come out of this crisis as well. Awesome. So moving on to the topic of resilience. So resilience means the capacity to adapt successfully to adversities. And I would like to note that resilience is not just a kind of trait that whether you have it or not. It is something that could be cultivated. It could be a kind of behavior, a series of behaviors, a kind of way we think, or a kind of emotions that is generated in that process. So without going into a ton of details, I would at least like to let you take away with this overview. So based on decades of research on resilience, there are 8 main factors that helps people cultivate their resilience. The first one is self-awareness, knowing what is important to you, knowing your strengths, self-regulation, optimism. These all have to do with how we control our thinking, right? Knowing that, okay, you know what, like I'm really drinking 1 bottle of wine every night because I'm just don't want to deal with what's going on at work, but it's time to stop. Enough is enough. I need to buckle up. That is regulation, right? Optimism, we'll talk about more. Connections, what's happening in this today is an example of that. You do want to stay connected with people. Mental agility is the ability to agilely solve problems, get unstuck, which has to do with optimism as well. Self-efficacy is believing that you can create change in your own life. This can come from your community. This can come from self-awareness and coming from your own ability to self-regulate as well. Positive institution. Tourism Burnaby is an example of positive institution. Your own organization who may have been supporting you in this difficult time is a kind of institution. We need organizations to be almost like an organizing force to help other people in the community feel resilient. The last one over here at the bottom is biology. Like our body is actually predisposed to be more positive. Some people are just more gregarious, more happy than the other. Some people do tend to be a little bit more, negative, or tend to see the glass as half empty. But there are things I could do to change that. For example, exercising. Flood your brain with dopamine. It helps with your ability to get motivated, right? Meditation, or just being able to relax your body or be mindful of your thinking. These have all been found by research to be beneficial to your well-being as well. So this is just an overview, and today we're gonna do more of a deep dive into the realm of optimism. So just very quickly as well, to give you a sense of all these skills actually have been taught in environments for folks as young as elementary school. Kids are taught a resilience program, but it's actually have been taught in the US Army, for example. This is their website, just to give you a snapshot, self-regulation, optimism. So we talked about the same thing, and the ATC tool, which we'll get into in a bit. So I'm just gonna quickly flip through this. And this kind of resilience skills training has been proven to improve well-being and also reduce the anxiety, right? The anxiousness that we were talking about earlier, that we are all feeling right now. So optimism, to learn about optimism, it's important to know what optimism is not. So it's not sunshines or rainbows. Like I said earlier, it's not about being an ostrich. It's not about ignoring the risks in our lives. It is about still acknowledging them, but also being level-headed and trying to notice and expect the positive things in our lives, and also to look for more of them, to amplify more of them. Also, we need to learn how to focus on what we can control. And last but not the least, just thinking positively or optimistically is not enough. We also need to know how to take actions after controlling our thinking. So these are almost like the three legs of a stool to keep our optimism grounded. Exploratory style, we talked about it earlier. Now let's expand on that more, is how people explain to themselves why they experience a particular event, either it's positive or negative. So psychologists found that people tend to have these three dimensions that characterizes their explanatory style: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. Let me explain that by showing you this model here. So whenever there's a bad event that happened, people who have this more of a pessimistic thinking style tend to think that, wow, this will last forever. I just never get over it. They tend to use words like always, right? Never in their language. So we do want to pay attention to the language we use when we're explaining a situation, because whatever we say is sending a signal to our brain on what the situation is, and your body, your emotions will behave accordingly. People who consider a situation to be pervasive or global tend to think that this bad event is going to undermine everything, right? For example, I support students. So students didn't do well in a particular job, like for example, a course, analytics, and they just think that their career is over. And I was like, your career is a completely different domain in our life. Let's say your failure or some setback in one area of your life does not mean that it's going to translate to some other areas of your life. Okay, so again, how we're working with this thinking style is to train you to assess a situation in a very neutral and realistic and accurate way, and not making it over negative or positive. Personalization is the last one. People who are pessimistic tend to own way too many responsibilities, feel guilty very easily. And this is not to say that we don't take responsibility. It's just not taking responsibilities too much that are not really from you, okay? Don't blame yourself way too much. Optimistic thinking style, the optimists are a little bit different. So when they're going through a bad event, they feel that, okay, this should pass soon. I just need to get going. I need to come up with a plan. They also believe that the bad event is only local, right? It's only limited to that domain, that situation that they're working with. And they also think that this is not completely their fault, right? For example, apply for a job, didn't get it. If I'm optimistic enough, I would also think that, maybe that job I'm just not a good fit for, right? Maybe they're looking for somebody else. It's not because I'm not good enough. All right. For good events, though, it's basically a switch. So the optimistic thinkers, whenever there's a good event happening to them, they would think that my future would also be good. Like, you know, I have done well in my past. I've overcome a certain hardship. I will prevail again in the future. Okay. Again, when it comes to good event, an optimist will think that I've done well in this particular area of my life. I'm going to do well. I've done well at school. I will be able to use the same kind of, perseverance, the kind of diligence to excel in my job as well. And then also they believe in their self-efficacy. They believe in their own power to make things happen. So just to illustrate this further, I would like you to pause a little bit to think about, what is my style? Am I a little bit more of an optimistic one or a pessimistic one? Okay, we are never completely one side of the spectrum. So maybe I'm gonna use a bit of the this exercise, and then I'll let you guys go back to do something on your own. This is a tool called the ATC tool. It stands for Activating Event, Thoughts, Consequence. So ATC. It is a pretty well-known tool in cognitive behavioral therapy. It has been used for decades, very, very well-known. And it can be used in our day-to-day life as well. I'll use my own experience of being laid off before to illustrate how we use the ATC tool to help us reframe, to help us feel better and cope with a difficult situation. For example, I was laid off after 7 years with the same company. So your activating event shouldn't have any judgment in here. It's just a fact, okay? Your thoughts is how those ideas that is going on in your head, right? So if I'm someone who is have this like permanence in my thinking style, then I would say I will not be able to find a good job like this anymore. If I tend to personalize, right? Take responsibility myself, then I would say that, you know what, like I just can never hold down a job. I just have never been able to do well. And this is my own fault. Like I got fired like that. So I can choose to think that way as well, right? But the consequence of thinking that way is that I can feel depressed and anxious all the time because of all the kind of like the downward spiral that I set myself into. So what we'd like to do with this tool is to dispute with ourselves, to question our thought. And there are different tools that you could use. One is to look for evidence. And there are almost like some prompts that you could use. For example, this is not true. It's not true that I will never be able to find a good job like this, right? Look at so-and-so. Lots of people who were laid off from TELUS before managed to find great jobs. And I can be like that too, as long as I work hard. Alternatively, maybe sometimes you can look for alternatives in the situation too. Maybe this path of telecom no longer worked for me. I actually have been thinking about some other paths as well. So a more accurate way of seeing this is that there are some other ways for me to continue a great career. Putting things in perspective is really useful for people who tend to catastrophize, to always gravitate towards the worst case scenario. It's so easy for us to do that because maybe we feel safer that way, right? We're bracing ourselves for the worst case scenario. However, we could put ourselves into misery as well. And our recommendation is that you also think about what is a more likely outcome and then come up with a plan to pursue that. So this could be an example, right? Describe a situation like being laid off and thinking that, okay, you know what, I'm never be able to find a job. Worst case scenario is that, yes, I will not be able to find a good job like that. but there's a best case that may not be, it could be unlikely, is that I'll find a job like within 3 months. It would be super quick. People will be hunting me down. And then what is the most likely situation? The kind of like that in between is that I work hard, I'm gonna go out to do networking, or I go out to get a lot of support from people. And I will be able to find something that I like, that is realistic at that time. And then because of that, I come up with a plan in step number 5. Whenever we have actions, we have some more concrete goals, we can draw our attention to those and then keep going rather than ruminating. And rumination has been found to lead to depressive symptoms, anxious symptoms. So I would like to send you to do an exercise, just a quick exercise, just to lock down these ideas that we just learned. You could choose to write it down, think about it in your head, or maybe just type it out on your computer. Maybe give you 2 minutes. So first of all, is identify an activating event that upsets you. It could be big or it could be small. What are some underlying thoughts that upset you? And you can think about that dimension. How did you feel, or what did you do as a result? Some emotions or some actions that comes out of that. And then I would invite you to try to dispute using the tools that I have in step number 4. If you find it really, really difficult, that's fine. At least come up with the top 3, because at least you articulated the thought that's behind an activating event. If you have any questions, feel free to pop up in the chat box and ask us. Okay. So Seth just shared one. So using maybe Seth as example is having virtual events, not upsetting, but sometimes an adjustment. So in that adjusting period, there might be a little annoyance in there that is going on, right? Maybe it's an inconvenience or lack of familiarity. So what is that little activating event that caused you to feel a certain way? What's that self-talk? That is what we're hoping to get you to identify so that we can dispute it.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here, make a
sure.
Yeah, like for me, I'm even with all these Zoom calls, and I'm not someone that's typically very virtual. I prefer to do all my things in person, I like social interaction. So to me, it was more of an understanding that I think when you look at the upsetting part was not knowing kind of what my next move is. For someone, I generally try to have a good perspective and say, I have pretty good control over things. So when you go into a place when you lose control, then you kind of have to go through your phases that you're mentioning. Is, well, here's the thing, like when you're thinking about it, everyone is going through the same situation, right? And you're not unique. So you have to get out of it, and you have to accept uncertainty. That is really kind of the main thing for me, right? So I don't know if anyone else wants to, or
yeah. Anybody want to share some ideas or anything that come up in this exercise? No? So Okay, so Kelly said that the realization that control is an illusion. Tell us a little bit more, Kelly. Is this the idea that you feel that control is not there? There's nothing that you can control. That is what you have been thinking. So to help you harness that, and it is, first of all, is to acknowledge that there are so many things that you cannot control. And I think, Seth, you were talking about that, right? So the how we work around that is to look for what is something that we can control, which perhaps, like Kelly, you just typed in, is staying in the present moment and managing what is in front of you right now. If you have some kind of goal or some kind of hope, and feel free to answer here, Kelly or Seth, that is out there in the horizon, maybe medium term, long term, what is something that you can do right now to help you progress towards that goal, to feel more in control? Helping others. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. And you are also in need of help. And that one thing, perhaps, Kelly, is to let people know then what exactly that help looks like. What would make you feel good? What is something that you don't know? And being able to ask for support, to be vulnerable, to say what you don't know is in itself a kind of courage. And it actually invites other people to almost like realize their own potential by supporting you as well. I'm not sure whether that kind of addresses some of the stuff that you're thinking about, and we can come back to that later too. Anything you want to add, Seth? You seem to want to say
Iris,
something.
maybe I can provide a little bit too. I know a lot of us work for larger organizations. Say if you work in a hotel or a DMO or a retail company that's a large organization where we do feel sometimes our hands are tied. There's only so much we can do. Like I said before, a lot of our companies have experienced, say, for example, layoffs or company restructuring throughout these times. And so that helplessness, that sense of we want to do something, we're people who are doers. We've always done things in our companies. And now in this crisis, we've reverted to our role as wait and see and take directives from others. So I think that's a challenge that a lot of us probably feel the same way, but there's not much guidance in that sense. So that feeling of helplessness and that loss of control is the hard part for a lot of us. We're grounded, we're staying at home, but there's only so much we can do at home. We can't go out and meet clients. We can't, like clients are calling at hotels, canceling their events, canceling their bookings, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So I think that issue really causes this type of impending doom, right? This notion that we can't do anything about it. So I mean, and that's where the dispute, the ideas you've provided to us, that we have to put in perspective. We're not alone in this. We all have, we are all in this together, and your competitor, your neighbor, everybody's going through something similar. So, I mean, in that sense, I guess we just all, like, the key thing for us is we really have to just put it into perspective, and how can we kind of create that plan? And I think a lot of us might not have even spent that time to figure that out yet. And so, I mean, a key thing, like you had said, is helping others. Something like what we're doing today, for me, helps everybody else feel more connected in this type of time. Otherwise, you do sit at home, or you do sit at the office thinking, what am I left to do? Am I just waiting to get laid off? So those ideas are the things that we're kind of nervous about.
Yeah. And thank you, Kelly, for acknowledging that as well in the chat here. And I would like to also point out that confirmation bias, the self-fulfilling prophecy, is that if we just keep going with the, okay, I cannot do anything, I'm hopeless, don't have control, then you would make that happen, right? And what we're trying to do is to get you to open up your mind. And there are a lot of things that we could do here. Engaging in something that makes you happy, even sometimes watching kitten videos on YouTube, these kind of things that injects your life with momentary positive emotions can help you become a little bit more open-minded, a bit more creative, to see little things that you could do to create some opportunities to make yourself feel better, or to help other people as well. And you actually touch on something that I didn't get a chance to touch on, is a caveat here in this exercise at the bottom of the slide, is that we all have our different, our pace of dealing with a crisis. Some people, it takes longer for them to emerge out of that curve, right? It's okay for you to be in denial for a bit. It's okay for you to stick your head in the sand to say, just let me immerse myself in my negative emotions. It's okay, it's acceptable. Using this exercise, which is highly cognitive, is only suitable when this person is like, you know what, okay, I'm done. I kind of unleashed that as kind of temporarily outside of my system. I'm ready to feel better. I'm ready to get help. This is where the beauty of this exercise comes out of. Okay. Beck has a comment.
Thank you, Iris. Just to point out, obviously, in any situation, whether it's during the World War II or during the high peak of the economy in North America, in any situation, we always have two choices, right? Think of it, take the positive side of it and think of the negative. So we can choose, as a human being, we can choose to concentrate on certain strengths or certain element of the situation that either builds you up or breaks you apart, right? So that again, everybody's in a similar situation at this point, and it's not a situation that's isolated to one person that got laid off, because if that was the situation, obviously it is really hard to overcome that, because you always think that, oh, I'm not good enough for my job, or there was another person who could easily replace my position, and so on. But in this situation, everybody is on a plane level, let's put it that way. So working from home myself as well, and obviously we are in a very difficult situation where we had to let go a lot of people in our team, and my heart goes out to every single one of them. But this is also, if you think around you, I was just driving around the neighborhood the other day just to see what's going on. Families are getting reunited, in a sense that in North America especially, people are so busy that kids are at the daycare, they're pretty much growing up with somebody else. People are reuniting and bonding again, or bonding stronger. And it also gives you, as a professional, it gives you time to rethink of your options, right? Because everybody gets busy, and weekends are also, schedule's always full with the kids. Sometimes you don't think about your own goals and your own perspective of what you're trying to achieve in the future. So this gives you this, downtime is giving the opportunity to people to think, okay, am I on the right industry? First of all, a lot of the people, go to school for, let's see, nursing program, and end up, working in a completely different industry. So, finding your passion, enjoy your hobbies, or find new hobbies that you can actually work on.
Exactly.
So it's not all negative.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot of benefits in here, Beck. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have some quick points to make? I understand that we're a bit over right now, but I'm ready to wrap up after this exercise. we're done with this exercise. So just trying to see. Anybody else? No? All right. So really just closing off, this is one exercise that's often used in the therapy, but also in our daily life, where small things such as seeing a boss who didn't seem very happy, and you think that, oh, are they mad at me? These exercises can be helpful in those small kind of adversity, small activating event as well. So the rest of the slides are really just appendix slides that are that I'm leaving you to take away. Thinking traps. What we just went through is actually just one little snippet of this chart over here. We don't have time to go through this. I just want to close up with this slide to remind you that there are so many levers that you could push to improve your resilience. Today, we only chip off a small chunk of it. So just be hopeful and be confident that there are things that can be done to help you cope in this difficult situation. And then I invite you to reach out to me, connect with me if you have any other questions. I really hope to be able to support you. And for those of you who would like some career resources, if more like career planning, ideation is what you're interested in, there are some books that I recommend on my other website as well. So I put it on the slide over here. Thank you so much for having me, and I apologize for going over time.
Thank you, Iris. Were there any questions for Iris before we conclude for the day? And hearing it and missed Iris's session today can actually download it or stream it. We will have this posted on LinkedIn, and we'll share the link for it within the week. We will send out a quick survey afterwards for everybody to find out if you'd like to hear similar topics or other types of topics for workshops, so we can continue to provide good quality content for everybody. As well as we are hosting our Wednesday social hour. This is a more informal chat for people to network, as well as to find out key insights. So the next social hour is actually tomorrow at 4 o'clock. On LinkedIn, we will share the meeting invite, as well as if you want to email one of us on the advisory group, we'll be able to send you the direct link as well. We welcome anybody in the tourism industry and those who want to connect for a chance to kind of feel more connected in our community. Tomorrow's session for social hour will actually be about the international students who are coming into BC and how we will facilitate that. I know it's BC focused, however, I'm sure they'll provide insights, especially to those DMOs like in Edmonton, for example, that may have similar situations that are arising in the different cities in Canada where international students do have permits and will be coming, and how can we as in tourism help facilitate that. So tomorrow's social hours at 4, and follow Tourism Burnaby on LinkedIn for the invite as well. Thank you, Iris, for helping us today on this workshop. It's very insightful, and hopefully we'll have you back again sometime to help provide another session in the future.